Hello and welcome back again. Today I'd like to talk about discovering the enemy. Oftentimes we try to vilify some aspect as the enemy is separate from ourselves and what's going on. And so it's like, why don't we just go ahead and figure out what that enemy is? And it might surprise some of us is what it is. I've noticed over time, as working with clients over a large number of years actually, that over time the perspective of where the real enemy is, who's the enemy, and what do we do about it, has shifted and changed. So I thought, well, I'll throw this in as a process for you to begin to look at, okay, where is my enemy? Where is the bad guy? And it's not something out there. Bottom line, that's what I kind of want to say. So first of all, what the enemy is not. Now the enemy is not the addiction or the co-addiction. It's not your capacity, like I've said, you've probably heard me if you've been in a workshop or one of the intensives, that I have historically been able to walk into a room, whether it's a mission field or a bar, and in 3 seconds find somebody to ruin my life with. I mean, I'm wired to do crazy things like that. And so bottom line though is, but that is not the enemy within me. That is not, I'm not the enemy. So bottom line, that's not the enemy. The substance that is drunk, smoked, snorted, shot up, or acted out is not the enemy. A lot of times we want to say, oh, alcohol is, it's the enemy and it's bad, and oh, we don't use that term in here. We don't talk about beer. We're going to turn the commercials off. We're going to do all that. Those are not the enemy either. A beer is a beer. Alcohol is alcohol. That is not the enemy. The other thing is, and it's not a person in our lives. In other words, my wife is not the enemy. My daddy's not the enemy. My mother wasn't the enemy. This perpetrator was not the enemy. That is not the enemy that plagues my life today in this world. It just doesn't. Now, the other thing is, it's not the abuse we suffered. Now, you would think that that kind of abuse, and we look to vilify a certain event in our life, is that was the altering factor or event in my life that turned my universe in a whole different direction. And what we do with that is that if we do this, if we focus on a substance, we focus on a behavior, we focus on a person or a particular event that we've suffered, then there's no change in our lives. The enemy will always be there and will always be victim. And this is the point I'm trying to bring out here, is that you're not a victim. Now, it's not even sin. Now, I know this is going to get somebody. Sin is not the enemy. Now, I'm going to take a leap here. Those of you who are, consider yourself Christians in the broadest sense, I'm not trying to get theological here with any particular idiosyncrasies of anybody's denomination. What I'm trying to say is it not most of us our belief that that Christ died for our sins once and for all sins past, all sins future, sins have been taken. In other words, God says, Eli, I want to be with you, I want to hang with you, I want to have a relationship with you so much that I'm going to remove any obstacle that's out there that would prevent you from coming to me and just hanging in the garden with me, hanging out with me, spending time with me. That's all I want. And so I'm going to take care of all the obstacles. So sin is not even really our enemy. There is a price that's been paid for that. It's been cleared off the table. So bottom line is, it's not really an entity of any kind, a substance of any kind that's the enemy. What is the enemy? Our enemy is the lies that we believe when shame washes over us and the lie ensnares us. When God came into the garden years and years ago, a long time, I don't know how long, and he's going to do his walkabout with Adam and Eve in the cool of the evening and just hang with them. There's no record of them giving him instructions or telling him what to do. He just came down to hang with them, to spend time with them. And so he's walking through the garden, and Adam and Eve aren't there in their usual place, in their show-up place. And so God's saying, where are you? Where are you? And Adam is saying, well, we're over here in the bushes. We didn't want you to see us naked. Now, come on. Adam been walking around buck naked for we don't know how long. It was not that. What was going on in Adam's mind is that the lie was that God was going to be really infuriated. There was no out for him. He'd messed up. Shame drove him into the bushes. Shame drove him to cover himself and to hide from God. Shame does that for us because it's that lie we believe when shame washes over us that causes us to go hide. And so bottom line, when that washes over us, we end up going down the rabbit hole. And when we fall down the rabbit hole, bottom line is that's when we age regress. That's when we get stuck back in some time past, and we believe the lie that washes over. It makes us feel small and insignificant. And when that happens, when shame washes over us and makes us feel small and insignificant, and we begin to believe the lie in our head that we're not worthy, we're not lovable, we're not enough, we don't measure up, whatever else it is, then that's when we will then either puff or shrink or puff up. In other words, if we feel small and insignificant, weak, we're going to get big. Now, whether we get angry, whether we get loud, whether we scream and holler, or we shrink, and that's when we just disappear. Now, I'm telling you what, people can disappear right in front of your very eyes. I mean, they can go off into nowhere land. I mean, they can just totally go, they're still standing there, and totally go somewhere else. That's when we numb and medicate, when we feel this way. We feel totally weak, we feel threatened, we feel fearful, and we medicate. We don't like who we are when shame tells us what we are. And then, or we pursue perfection. If I do it well enough, if I make enough, if I measure up enough, if I get important enough, whatever it is out there, if I can measure up to this perfection concept, then I won't be small or weak. And then this is when we run. When shame washes over us, we run. That's when we get down to weeds. That's when we go out and we avoid relationship. That's when we either shut down emotions and just kind of clip right on through, because we don't want to get too happy. We don't want to get too excited about anything, because we're going to drop down. Because if we do, then the disappointment will really be deep. And the other thing is, I fear feelings of vulnerability and joy. Bottom line, if I move to the place of joy, if I come to the short place, if I come to the short place, and a place where I am known, I am seen, I feel vulnerable, but I can't be certain. Will this last? Will I be accepted? Will somebody else be there when I get there? And so as we work our recovery, one of the enemies that gets us more times than not is us experiencing the joy that the pure bliss of finally getting to a place where we're sober, we're acting, we're showing up, and somebody else shows up and they say, not only do they love you, but they like you. You're okay. You're not perfect, you're okay. I'm okay with this. All of a sudden now you're in a different place altogether. And this is a very, very scary place to be. This more often than not, and this is just a thought, I don't have any research to back it up. Pat Carnes has often said in some of his research that somewhere around 9 to 18 months is the biggest window, or the window where the biggest number, the largest number of people relapse in their recovery. Now, there's a thought here. I have no idea, I don't have the research on this, but I'm wondering. Usually I've noticed over the period of years that couples, having worked their program, worked their recovery, worked sobriety, and they get somewhere around that year mark, that they begin to experience intimacy, vulnerability, joy, and it frightens them. I know that Dr. Brene Brown says that joy is one of the most difficult emotions humans can experience. It's the most frightening. And so it's interesting enough that as you leave the weeds and you move into the short place and you begin to experience that vulnerability here, it becomes very frightening. This is very scary. A lot of times people run back to the bushes, whatever that behavior is, because it was too scary to stay here. They sabotage relationships, sabotage recovery, because they now realize they live in a world where they're known, they've been honest, they've been transparent, they've been vulnerable, and they're not sure that it's going to continue to happen. What happens if this ends tomorrow? I can't live with that uncertainty. So you go sabotage the relationship. You go sabotage the recovery, because you can't stay in this uncertainty. And I'm going to tell you right now, probably that's one of the biggest things that we struggle with in our faith walk with God, is that there's nothing really you can be certain about. This is called a faith walk. So when we come to the short place with God, we come in faith. The things that are yet to be coming, that yet to arrive, that we have not yet seen, are those things that we hope for. But hope is that which we've not yet attained. And so two of the key things that Paul talks about in Corinthians that are the most important, faith and hope, are things that are not certain. There's a lot of uncertainty with that. The one that's not is love, because that's a verb, that's an action. That's the thing of saying, I'm going to show up here no matter how frightened I am, and I'm going to be vulnerable, I'm going to be transparent, and I'm going to be seen and known. Now, remember this. A lot of times we run to the bushes, and we run not because of a trigger, not because of shame, but because of just the absolutely fear of experiencing the joy and intimacy. And more often than not, when I get my clients to identify this, they realize that what really is frightening them right now and causing them all the getting squirrely is that they're really experiencing some good things with their spouse, and it frightens either the spouse or them. So as a heads up for you, that if you find yourself out there somewhere in your recovery and you begin to experience some of this real fear and everything in you wants to run, the enemy is not your addiction. The enemy is, one, the message that shame is giving you, and leaning into and experiencing what it's like to be at the show-up place with someone else in your world. Thank you.